was completely reinvented, re-engineered in the middle of the 19th century in order to produce chaps to go out and run the empire. Yes,
and a lot of sports as well.
Sports, yes. I mean, sports. As you would know more than most, but actually you don't pay attention to the sports news. You probably won't be aware. But most of the sports that we talk about now, whether obvious ones, cricket, rugby and soccer and so on, codified by the British, but tennis and the rest, they're essentially late 19th century, mid-19th century codifications. And they are because this is... It's not because we are uniquely good at sport, as unfortunately we discover all the time, but because we were the world's leading nation at the time.
When did our attitude to empire change? Because for a long time in fiction, empire and the heroes of empire were celebrated, and that turned. And fiction celebrated, I suppose, those figures that stood up to British oppressors, or it was satirised, or people like Harry Flashman became the sort of dominant figures. It was much of a cad of the storytelling of empire. Yes. When did we go from being quite cool with it to being really uncomfortable with it? And why did that happen?
It all starts happening once the thing gets into its pomp. As I said earlier, it's essentially grabbed by individuals, Jack the Lad characters. It then, in the 19th century, becomes seen as some sort of mission to the world. And then by the latter stage, the last few years of the 19th century and the early years of the 20th century, people are beginning to say, hang on, this isn't right. Then you get the rise of independence movements, notably, of course, in India. And once you get to the end of the Second World War, the British have just lost interest. I mean, the example that springs to mind to me is there was something called the British Empire Exhibition in 1924, which is at the site, actually, of the current Wembley Stadium. And they built what were then the biggest concrete buildings in the world. And people did go to see this thing presented to them as the British Empire. Basically, they weren't interested. They just wanted to go there to go on the dodgems. And it was the immense frustration of the organisers. So we kind of lost interest. And by the second half of the 20th century, it was just an embarrassment. And then you get this long procession of countries taking their independence. And the track of our lives, really, is two national anthems being played, the British national anthem while the flag goes down, and the national anthem of the newly independent country as the flag goes up.
Are you on Newsnight tonight?
No, I'm not doing Newsnight tonight, no. This book's published today, so I've got to talk to you instead.
Yeah, you're in TV Centre now. It's the same
I'm
building.
excited, yes. Is
that the sort of story that interests you? Adam Werrity, Liam Fox?
Yeah, I do think it's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, changes in the government are fascinating, yes.
Do you still love doing Newsnight?
Yes.
Do you? How long's it been now? 22 years, something like that?
I have no idea. A very long time. Yeah. I mean, I do, and I still get a buzz out of... I still get that. You must get it too. Perhaps you don't get it, I don't know. But that sense of little me, you know what I mean? That sort of... By what right do you ask a question of somebody? By what right? You're just an ordinary Joe.
But it's a privilege, isn't it, to do these jobs where you meet these very interesting, very powerful people.
Well, I must say, I do think that. And sometimes when I thought, well, who are you? The only answer I can ever come up with is, well, I've got exactly the same right as any other citizen. The question is not the right that you've got, it's just the opportunity you've got. And if you get the opportunity, if you ask a question, you should make damn sure you get some sort of answer to it, or it's abundantly clear the question's not being asked, I think. But it's a quite perplexing issue, I think.
Do you ever think you've gone too far in an interview?
Yes.
When?
Mind your own business. I say that because actually I can't now recall off the top of my head.
That's you now not answering my question, Jeremy Paxman.
It is. I'm not answering.
Don't let me go on Michael Howard on your ass.
I'm not answering your question because you're asking me to. I have frequently thought it, but if you ask me to itemise those interviews in which or after which I have thought it, I'd have to rack my brains, I think. But I certainly have felt it.
Have you had interviews where at the end it's been very cold, where the interviewee has clearly been annoyed?
Yes.
And that happens quite a lot.
No, it doesn't happen a lot. I mean, people always make a big drama out of this, but actually, most of the time it's not. It is a transaction, this, in which the cards have not been kind of dealt evenly. The person you're interviewing has the information, you seek the information. It's up to them whether they disclose or not. And it's your job to find a way of disclosing. the successful interview, it seems to me, is the one in which you have learned something, even if what you have learned is more impressionistic than you might have expected. So that's how I think I judge success or failure. I don't judge it by the mood in which the person leaves or I leave. That's kind of irrelevant.
What about if it's just out and out entertaining?
Well, there are those. I expect you're referring to Boris Johnson last week, yes. Well, I mean, actually, although we didn't learn anything much about Boris's policies, I thought it was quite a political interview and funny. My favourite moment in it was when I asked him if he felt intellectually inferior to David Cameron, to which he went, inferior. It was very funny.
I think at that
moment volumes, I thought.
We did learn something. Let's have a little listen to a clip of that interview from last week.
Look, I mean, this is... come on. This is playground stuff, Jeremy.
You're quite right, it is.
This is playground stuff.
Your performance has not been playground-like.
What people... Well, I've done my best under some pretty... Look, what people want to...
It's there. If you look on YouTube, you can see plenty of that. That was a show from the party conference. Two things about that. David Cameron didn't come on your show from the party conference. So the style that you have, is it a balance between wanting to get a sort of a truth out of someone or some information and not wanting to put people off coming on the programme because of your style? And do you think people like David Cameron now prefer to subject themselves to slightly softer interviews?
I don't know. You would have to ask David Cameron why he didn't want to come on Newsnight last week, but I'm not, to be honest with you, I'm not even sure we invited him because we had to leave before he delivered his speech. So I don't know what the answer to that is, but I mean, there is no constitutional right which says that somebody has to appear on Newsnight. That is not an obligation, and it's a matter of personal choice, therefore. And if you're saying, do you worry that at some point your bosses may decide that you are counterproductive? Well, you can't change what you do, but of course it must be a consideration at some point.
There have been one or two commentators lately who've been criticising Newsnight. I don't know if you've read these. There was a piece by Stephen Glover in The Independent, and I think a follow-up piece in The Observer, where the implication is that it's lost its edge to some degree. He talked about you having lost the old gladiatorial glint in your eye.
I don't think we have to take seriously what Stephen Glover says, do we? You obviously do, but...
No, he's not. But to me, he's not the only one. Douglas Carswell, a Tory MP, called it News Light.
I didn't see that particular piece of abuse, no. But he's entitled to his view. I mean, I don't think it's true, as it is also not true that we've got a problem with audiences. Our audience, you refer to the show that Boris was on Tuesday last week, which is the last one for which I've got figures. I think we inherited something like 700,000. You'd have to check the figures. 700,000 from Jules Holland, and we built it to 1 million. I mean, which is about what it's always been.
It's sometimes said that the shows that you present tend to rate better than the shows presented by other people. Is that true? If that is true, is that an issue?
I don't know.
You must know.
I don't know. I'm telling you honestly, I don't know. It's rather surprising. I'm able to tell you even the figures for last Tuesday's programme. Somebody mentioned it the next day. That's all. Okay. I don't really know.
So, in Brilton, those commentators who seem to think the show has changed a bit, are you saying that is not true? And are you happy with where the show is and the direction of the programme?
It has changed. Yes, of course it's changed.
How's it changed?
Well, there are fewer films of a certain kind than there used to be. That's partly because we haven't got the money to make films in the way that we used to have. There's a different kind of idiom, I think, now. I don't know what your listeners think about this, but I do find much of the idiom of television news in which, a bloke in a suit stands up in a studio and points his finger at people effectively. I don't care for that. I don't know why that's become the dominant way of doing things. I prefer something at that time. We're on jolly late. And it seems to me it's our job to make sense of things as far as we can for the viewer, and that seems to me to be more suited to a sitting down kind of late evening.
So you're happy with where the show is at?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the money as well, and everyone at the BBC, all shows are facing cuts, and this DQF, this sort of euphemism for cuts.
It's DQF. I'm never quite sure what it stands for. I keep referring to it as MFI, but okay. I've forgotten what it's called. What it stands for.
Delivering quality first is an unusual turn of phrase.
Yeah.
Apparently, delivering quality first includes taking some reporters away from Newsnight. I don't quite know how that works, but that's what's happening. The programme is facing some cuts, I think, isn't it?
I believe so,
Does that concern you?
I don't think that we are in a position where we can't do what we want to do. But, the details of that, I don't think it stops us doing.
You're not going to go to party conferences anymore. Does that break your heart?
Well, I've been arguing for about 15 years that these things are no longer what they were. The party conferences used to matter, it seems to me, at the time that they made party policy and therefore would shape the laws that govern people's lives. But since even the Labour Party stopped them making policy some many years ago now, best part of 20 years ago, when Neil Kinnock was leader, they seem to me to be a pretty empty vessel. They're rallies now, and I think we've got to be very, very careful about how we present them to the public, so it doesn't break my heart if we can't go. And I'm not sure. I don't know what the details are on that.
I've actually wondered if News takes party conferences a bit too seriously or gives them too much coverage now. I think was it on Tuesday last week, I put the Today programme on, and their 8:10, their main item was about George Osborne's speech, I think, and the Amanda Knox verdict had come in the night before, and it's one of those, the country wasn't talking about George Osborne's speech.
No, the country wasn't. I think I don't know. I don't want to get in the position of defending the Today programme, but in terms of relevance to people's lives, what the Chancellor of the Exchequer proposes to do with the taxation and spending system in this country is clearly more relevant to people's lives than what happened in a court in Perugia.
Yeah, which is a different assessment, I suppose.
It may be not what people are talking about. It's the difference between what the public's interested in and what's the public interest.
Jeremy, thank you for coming in. How long will you carry on doing Newsnight for, do you think?
Well, I don't know. Are you after the job?
I think I've
have to dress a bit better,
and listen.
I saw you got some new shoes on, but I mean, you'd have to smart up the rest of you. No, I don't know. I'll carry on doing it for. Well, I enjoy it. I like meeting people. I like finding things out. So it's great. And write books in the meantime. So that's great.
Great. Thank you very much. The book is fascinating. Really is fascinating.
Thank you for having me.
I learnt a lot from the book.
Oh gosh,
it's called Empire. Well, that's what you like people learning, don't you?
Yes. That's what our trade's about, isn't it? Finding things out and passing it on to people, learning things.
Empire, What Ruling the World Did to the British by Jeremy Paxman is out now.